Welcome to Recovery with Root, a podcast centered on topics surrounding mental health and addiction. Through our Advanced Recovery Institute, a new entity of the Root Center for Advanced Recovery, we are committed to research and training to elevate clinical care. We hope you find this podcast informative, and most of all, we hope that it helps improve the lives of others. Remember, we're in this together, and recovery is possible. Welcome back to another episode of Recovery with Root. I'm Margot Farrell, Chief of Staff here at the Root Center for Advanced Recovery. It is summer. We are in full swing, and today I'm joined with Kaylyn Banning, one of our adolescent counselors here at the Root Center, to talk to us a little bit about how we transition into those summer months, specifically if you are the parent or a caretaker of a teenager. Kaylyn, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Such an important topic. I know we feel like it's summer. It's certainly 1,000,000 degrees outside.
It definitely feels like summer.
The kids are out of school now. Most graduations are complete.
That's right.
And so, you typically spend your days in Cromwell Middle School.
I do.
You're one of our adolescent counselors. Talk a little bit about teen mental health overall, how you see it fluctuate during the year. And then now today's topic, we're focusing on what happens in the summer months, because that schedule that we know and love during the year is something very different.
Yeah, so throughout the school year, you'll see the teens kind of go through different phases. In the fall, they're very motivated, they're very excited. In the winter, you do get a little lull, the weather, things like that. It does get darker a lot earlier. But also you have a lot of kids involved in activities and sports in the winter. In the spring, that's when you start to see kids start to look forward to summer. So they may start to slack off or get a little lazy, get a little nonchalant about their schoolwork. And then we go right into summer. And summer can be a really difficult transition. They're going from very rigid days, very structured, very scheduled, to having a lot of freedom, which in turn can increase, unfortunately, some of those mental health symptoms, and have a little difficult transition time.
Because we talk about, the summer and how important it is also for kids to have time to feel like a kid, right?
Yes.
And those summer months are so important for some of that exploration, that freedom. But at the same time, you mentioned it goes from having a rigid, very structured day to sometimes no structure, right? Some kids might be going to camps, they might have plans, they might have a summer job, but other kids may not. Mm-hmm. What do you caution parents or caretakers as really being, something that should be on the forefront of their mind as they're going into those summer months to make that transition a little smooth? Obviously, let the kids be kids, enjoy themselves, but making sure that they don't get so far off their routine that then it starts to have those negative impacts.
Yes. So what I always say is try your very hardest to have a balance between structure and flexibility. So you want to have some semblance of a routine. And that doesn't mean that you have to expect your child to continue to wake up at 6, 7 a.m. in the summer. Maybe it's, I'd like to see you up between 9 and 10 every day. And we're going to have breakfast. I'd like you to have breakfast. If you take medications, we're going to continue those medications over the summer. Just make sure that you're feeling well, you're feeling happy. And then continue to give them flexibility. Let them maybe choose some activities. Help them come up with an agreement with you for screen time. So making time intentional rather than just doom scrolling, which can definitely attribute to some mental health symptoms as well.
Well, yeah, because we think about with the phone, if you're in school, that's at least 6 to 8 hours where they're not falling into that doom scroll, hopefully, right?
Yes.
Talk about what can happen with that unlimited screen time. As screen time goes up, what do you typically see as a response with the students?
Yeah, so when screen time goes up, I see is a heightened sense of anxiety because they are locked into the screen. They don't have the typical social outlets. When you're thinking social media, that actually is attributing to social isolation in the summer for teens, because they're getting so locked into their phones that they're not making plans to hang out with their friends, do activities, rather than doing meaningful things and spending time outdoors or doing something recreational. They actually get a little isolated by locking into social media, and maybe their only interactions are on the phone rather than face-to-face interactions.
And also, I feel like in this day and age, it's impossible sometimes to not fall prey to that FOMO feeling, right? The fear of missing out. And so if you're seeing your friends are going on these lavish vacations, these trips, and you're not, that can also, I'm sure, lead to these feelings of comparison.
Comparison in what you're doing in activities, and also summer months are heightening the difficulties with body image because you're so much on your phone. It's like people are more pressured to wear, shorts and tank tops and bathing suits. And you're seeing that a lot on social media, and that can really affect body image as well during the summer.
How do you tell parents to cope with that? Because obviously, kids have their phone. It's pretty ingrained, I think, to say, just don't do it is naive because the kids will find it somewhere, right? If
Of
not
course.
theirs, their friends.
Yes.
So how do you tell parents to manage that in a world where it's all around us?
Yeah, so what I tell parents is to try and keep an open line of communication with their teens about what they're doing on their phones, what they're seeing on social media. Try and have conversations with them about it rather than being punitive. And then I would also recommend limiting screen time, but limiting in a way that they have things to do on their phones. Like, hey, why don't you have a group chat with your friends, check in with your friends, do this, encourage them to do things like FaceTime rather than just sitting on TikTok or things like that.
Now, while they have all this extra time, we can talk about how that extra time can obviously lead to boredom and maybe things that are negative. But on the flip side, because I don't want to keep this all negative, it can also open up a lot of time if, per se, someone has a child that's struggling. That's suddenly a lot of time in the day that you could dedicate to making time for therapy, maybe making time for groups and things like that that the child may feel overwhelmed with during the year when they have all their other responsibilities. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, summer is a great time to explore the need for higher level of care for teens. And what I mean by that is maybe the typical once a week outpatient therapy that they're getting is not enough. And they have this free time. They can do things like intensive outpatient programs, partial hospitalization programs, and that gives them a lot of structure during the summer. They could have groups, 3 to 5 days a week for a couple of hours. They're working on building skills, and it gives them that time to build that confidence, build those skills before they go back to school, and they can utilize those skills.
When you're talking about going back to school, sometimes I think, initially thinking back to when I was on summer break, right? You're thinking how exciting it is at first, but then as you're approaching the new school year, some new anxieties can start to settle in, especially if maybe you're making that transition from middle school to high school, or you're suddenly a freshman in a new building, or you're going to be a senior and it's almost kind of wrapping up. What do you see as some of the typical anxieties or the most common anxieties that kids express to you in those summer months?
Yeah, so change, right? So all different types of changes, whether it's going back to school, a different school, or changes with friends, oh, I haven't really seen this person over the summer. How are they going to respond to me when we get back to school? Are we still, as close as we were when we left school? Or maybe they've made new friends, or maybe I've made new friends and I'm worried about how that's going to be received in school. So I think there's a lot of different things that resonate with change for kids going back to school. And then, of course, there's the anxiety of, oh no, now I have to start waking up early again. I'm going to start having homework. There's the academic pressure that starts, and just trying to have parents support them through that and let them know that they have people through the change.
What are some actionable things that you give kids who express those kinds of emotions? What do you tell them to try to help ground them and bring them back to the present moment when they're feeling that overwhelmed?
I would say to help them bring them back to the present moment, feel more grounded, would be I like to do deep breathing with the kids. We do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with the senses to help with mindfulness. And then also I encourage them to keep their therapy appointments, every week throughout the summer. So that's consistent. Therapeutic consistency throughout the summer is really going to help, because as we go back to school and we have the school-based counselors, we can continue to see them in the school. And that's one sense of consistency to carry them through the change.
I imagine that has to probably be a common conversation you have to have with parents too about keeping that consistency.
Definitely.
Right? Because I think parents probably think there's, oh, well, they're taking a break from school and maybe they can also get a break from this. But, what I'm hearing you say and what the research kind of says is that now more than ever is when you keep that pattern alive.
Right. So as they're losing other sense of routine, this is a great thing to continue to be like, okay, every week at this time, you have therapy. It's a positive thing. It's not a punishment. We're going to enjoy it. I know our adolescent counselors are so creative and so engaging here at Root that summer sessions are so fun. I take clients outside if it's not 100 degrees out, of course. Let's go outside. Let's sit in the shade and talk. Let's enjoy each other's company over the summer, right? And then continuing into the school, I can keep up with, where their mental health is, but also I can help the parents. If you're consistent bringing your child, I can help you as well as things come up with your child. So maintaining that connection with the parents is so important.
What does some of our programming look like in the summer months? I know normally you're in Cromwell Middle School. So as we transition when kids are not in school, what does your day look like?
So Root Center has this wonderful opportunity this year over the summer. We are actually staying in the schools to provide therapy instead of having the kids come up maybe to a clinic. It's a little bit out of the ordinary for them. We are able to stay in our schools. We are so thankful. They come right to the same place that they've been going to, during the school year. And we continue to provide that individual therapy. We also have some wonderful adolescent groups going on. I've talked a little bit about PHP and IOP in Middletown at Saybrook Road. We have some wonderful teen IOP and PHP groups going on. And then for outpatient groups now, for our school-based clients, we have groups ranging from elementary, intermediate, middle school, and high school groups. And these groups are so beneficial, especially over the summer when kids need to check in with peers, kind of see how they're doing, continue that work on social skills and social awareness. And these groups are so great. We're doing things from skill building to mental health check-in. We're working on, communication, hygiene. There's just so many different things that we can address in these groups while also providing that social outlet for teens during the summer.
It's also interesting, too, because you're mentioning from like kindergarten age on up. And, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, the importance of introducing kids to therapy and the concept of therapy at a young age and normalizing it.
Absolutely.
The summer can be a great time to do that because it's just like they have more time in their day. They're not juggling maybe 50 million sports and after school clubs. And speak to the parent who might be a little hesitant thinking, I think my kid's okay. And I don't think they need to talk to anybody. We were saying, even if you think your kid is good, even if you're good, it's always so helpful to have someone to go to.
Definitely. And the summer is a great time to do that because maybe they are feeling really good. And you can present this as a positive thing rather than, something bad's happened and now you have to go to therapy. Over the summer, it's be like, hey, I have this thing I'd really like you to try to start talking to this and explain it to them. This is just going to maintain your happiness, right? So maybe like I said, maybe they're doing really well. So now's a good time to start with a therapist and build that relationship so that when you're going into school and you're going through these changes and that anxiety, the child is already feeling comfortable with that therapist to talk with them and express their feelings and work on the difficult things. And during the summer, you've worked on that relationship, you built that rapport. And so you're going into the school, you're feeling in a really strong relationship.
Can you, for the skeptics out there, the folks who are not sure about what the changes might be or the benefits might be, talk about how you've seen some kids evolve, like maybe give some anecdotal stories about, maybe a child who came to see you and where they kind of left off after a little bit of getting into the routine of therapy. Like explain to us really the benefits for someone who's never been exposed to it.
Yeah, there's endless benefits, of course, but I'm thinking of one client in particular who was so skeptical. A female, middle school client was so skeptical, she wasn't maybe recognizing in herself, the difficulties, the struggles that she was having. And I said, you know what, come down, let's just chat. Let's play Uno. Let's get to know each other. And that, we really connected. And we started opening up the door to things that were going on in her life and things that she was struggling with. And this was the first time she was able to tell someone about it and really open up and talk about it. And working through that, we were able to, make her home life a lot more comfortable. We were able to open up that line of communication with her parents and make it a much more comfortable place at home. And then going into the summer now, she was so worried about having to spend so much time at home and being uncomfortable and stuff. And now over the summer, we worked on family stuff. We worked with her. She's having a wonderful summer. She's engaging with her parents, engaging with her siblings. It's so great to see just the change in the whole family even.
Right. So one child really could impact the family dynamic. And, what you're saying is, I think when you think of therapy, like, my mind doesn't immediately go to a game of Uno. But with kids, there's all these different ways to try to reach them and,
Yes.
meeting them where they're at. And a simple game of Uno is what
Yes.
uncovered, the struggles maybe that this girl was going through and allowed her to
Absolutely.
feel comfortable to now feeling like she can settle in her own skin.
Yeah.
And that has to be really rewarding for the parents to see too. Because
Yeah.
I'm not a parent, but I can imagine that the only thing you want is for your child to succeed, be safe,
Absolutely.
and healthy.
Absolutely. And taking the time to build the child's trust is what I really focus on, because they need to know that not only am I a safe adult, but I'm an adult that you can trust. I'm an adult that's going to try to support you through anything. So building that is just so amazing with them.
And you showed right there a perfect example of how the summer benefited because what she was struggling with was actually something that could have potentially intensified in the summer months when she had to spend more time at home.
Definitely. And being able to recognize that before the summer to get a prevention approach rather than like, crisis, summer's arrived, and just getting into therapy. Then we were able to do a prevention approach, and it was wonderful.
Well, and so much is really about rewiring the brain and just, teaching new habits and implementing those things so it becomes routine. So the younger you can access those rewiring patterns, then the longer lasting it can be, right? I imagine it's a lot easier to rewire something at 12 than it might be at 35, You want to get to people early.
Of course. And teaching coping skills and social skills and things at a young age is so beneficial. You're helping them grow in a mental and wellness space.
So really, and the point of this episode was that I wanted to give parents an awareness that, A, help is out there, and that B, not to fear the summer. I hear from, even a lot of my own friends and colleagues who have children, they're like, oh my gosh, the summer, like now we have to figure out what we're doing with our days. And I understand the chaos that comes with it, but also to see that there can be such benefit, whether you're struggling with your child or your child is struggling at that moment, like summertime can be a benefit if done correctly. But it seems like it all comes back to consistency and routine.
Absolutely. Definitely. And making sure as we're not quite there yet, but as we're approaching August and going back towards school, that you're starting to go back into a school routine before school starts.
And it almost is like prepping kids too in a way for adulthood, because adulthood is going to have changes that aren't only going to come in the summer. They're going, your schedule can change at the drop of a hat, and your days will ebb and flow over the course of the year. How have you seen kids have you experienced kids maybe towards the end of their high school who then have left the program, or how are they doing kind of after having exposure to therapy during their younger years?
I think that it's amazing because they know about therapy, they know of the benefits of therapy, and they're normalizing therapy for themselves already. So when they get to college, they already have some of the skills to recognize in themselves, hey, I'm starting to feel this anxiety, or I'm starting to feel some symptoms of depression. I should see a therapist. And knowing and recognizing that and seeking the resources that they need because they've done it before.
It was so interesting. I was listening to a podcast, ironically, about someone who was discussing feeling symptoms of anxiety as a child and not realizing until they were adult that what they were experiencing, the tight chest, the shortness of breath, they expressed that to their parent, and their parent at the time, this was probably, he was talking about something about 25 years ago.
Wow.
The parent did not see it as a mental health condition, and he was 10 years old. He had no idea either. Now, with all the work that he's done and he's in the field, he said, what I was experiencing was anxiety, but I didn't know. And my parents didn't know. And he went to the doctor, was having cardiac tests and all these things, looking at it because it can have very real physical symptoms. And if the parents aren't aware and the kids aren't aware, then you start to fear those symptoms and you do anything to push it away.
Right. And for children, they sometimes lack the language to be able to tell you what they're feeling as anxiety. So opening up their minds to therapy and mental health really helps them gain that language instead of maybe my stomach really hurts today. Like I might throw up. You're thinking that they may have a stomach bug or an upset stomach, but instead giving them that language like, I'm anxious, like I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling it in my body, my heart is pounding, and helping them recognize, okay, you're not sick, you're okay, let's talk about this. What can we do together to make you feel better, to calm you down?
Well, because even for us as adults, mental health conditions, you can't see it. It's not like a broken leg or a bruise
Right.
on your arm. And if you don't know those symptoms and to know that it can manifest that way, that can be really scary, thinking, I'm going to have a heart attack, or I'm
Right.
about to throw up, or something that feels
Right.
very emergent, and
Yeah.
not knowing that our mental health can absolutely have those very physical symptoms.
Absolutely. Especially if it's your first time having a panic attack or having anxiety.
I'm sure with, the different strategies that you have, whether it be Uno or coloring or taking the kids outside, they're able to find that language or describe it in a way that then to you makes it so clear that, okay, this is a mental sensation that's now being felt throughout the body.
Absolutely.
Would you have any last words, any type of advice for parents who come across this podcast and they're just kind of, what would you want the lasting thought to be for them when considering summer months and their child's health?
It's okay to be flexible with your structure and routine. So while implementing structure and routine, give your kids time to be kids. Give them time to have free time. They need it. That's why they get the break from summer. So when I'm talking about structure and routine, it doesn't have to be an overload of activities and very rigid wake up and alarm and all of that. Let them be kids, let them have fun, support them, and keep the lines of communication open.
And if anybody wants to get involved with our services here at Root, why don't you tell them how they can do that?
Sure. So if you'd like to get involved with our services at Root for your teens, you can go ahead and contact our Middletown Saybrook office for IOP, PHP for teens, adolescents. And for school-based, you can contact Ariana Turi, who is our Senior School Based Clinician.
Awesome. We'll have all that information posted in the details of this podcast. Kaylyn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of our podcast, Recovery with Root. As always, stay connected with us on social media to learn about when next podcast episodes will drop. You can comment, ask questions, even let us know about future topics that you'd like to see discussed. Until next time, remember, progress is the destination.